Hello, everyone. My name's Yvonne Prang. I'm a Senior Director at Global Rewards at McDonald's. Today, I'm very thrilled to share our journey on global equal pay with you in a very decentralized organization. We are the world's largest restaurant company. We run nearly 40,000 restaurants worldwide. We employ 2.2 million people working for McDonald's or franchisees in 119 countries, and we serve 65 million customers every single day. This is huge. We're huge and we're global. At the same time, we are a very local employer because, as I already mentioned, a large base of our restaurants is run by local franchisees. 93% of our 40,000 restaurants are owned and run by franchisees. We even, in about 100 countries, have franchisees who run the entire country. And we only have 19 countries. The US market is our largest, and the 18 international operated markets where we as a company have company-owned restaurants, and we do have a service organization supporting those. As I said, only about 7% of our McDonald's restaurant basis is company operated. So, quick fun one. How well do you know McDonald's? And I know that this cannot be a very interactive moment and session at the moment, but think to yourself, what was the very first European country to open a McDonald's restaurant? And drum roll, it was the Netherlands, actually. The first McDonald's restaurant opened in 1971 in a Dutch city, closely followed by Munich in West Germany, where I'm located, and then Créteil near to Paris in France in 1972. So we also have a pretty large and long European history. So the journey today is gonna take you. I'll talk a little bit about what we've done and how we've done it. So it's gonna be a bit technical, but I'll try to keep this very light and very high level. Talking about our journey so far and how that continues, and leave you with some key takeaways at the end. So let's get started. Our aim is very simple. We believe in equal pay for equal work. That is our strategy. That is at the core of what we're trying to achieve. How are we going to do that? Basically, we're using equal pay analysis that compares the pay of employees in the same or very similar jobs. So that is where it gets a little bit technical, and I'll explain what that means. What do we want to achieve? We have committed to close pay gaps that we identify in our annual analysis for women globally in our company-owned and operated markets, and for historically underrepresented groups in the US. We aim to eliminate bias in pay decisions. So I'll also talk a little bit about how to go about that, and remove barriers to equal pay for equal work. As a result, or the outcome, the intended outcome is to making McDonald's a truly inclusive environment for all. How are we going to do this? Well, now it gets a little bit technical. Basically, the key terms for the data analysis that we're using is median pay, or is how do we quantify the pay gap? Basically, the so-called unadjusted pay gap is when you compare the median of men's pay with the median of women's pay. In this illustrative example that I've brought here with you, the median of men's pay would be $100,000, whereas the median of women's pay is $90,000. And the unadjusted or the raw pay gap would then be $10,000 US. Now, when we take into account, that's just comparing averages. When we take into account level, work experience, McDonald's experience, location, and all such factors where we believe they drive differences in pay, and rightfully so, then what you do then is you statistically model that, and then you have an explained gap. Basically, you explain those differences by legitimate factors. And then the remaining gap is the adjusted pay gap. How do you do that? Basically, and that's like very simplified and quickly explained. Basically, what we do is, or what you do when you want to do an analysis like that, is you collect the data of all individuals and you model the factors, and then you build what's called an expected pay line. So based on the factors in the model that we are using in statistical modeling, and saying the underlying principle is that people in equal jobs with equal tenure, with equal experience, with equal function, very similar, they should be very similar in pay. And that is what you model out. And then what you do, that is the blue line here, which is the expected pay line. Then what you do is you build a range of acceptability where the pay that you're looking at is close enough to the expected pay. That's a so-called confidence interval, and that's very normal what you do in statistical modeling. So everything that's within that confidence interval that's close enough to the expected pay is deemed to be okay. And then you focus on the little dots here that are outside of the expected pay. So either higher, or what's more worrying usually is below the expected pay line or the confidence interval. So they are being paid considerably less than expectation. What you then do is, and that's the end of the technical pieces, is what you then do is you group the people together. That means all women, all men, and then you also look at the different underrepresented groups, historically underrepresented groups, or same jobs, same function, basically you sort and group people. It's statistically speaking quite simple. And then that is what gives you then the respective gap for the group of people that you compare to others. So how have we done that, and what has been our journey so far? We have set a very simple strategy and a very simple process and followed that route. Underpinned this is by our belief in equal pay for equal work. That's a very simple strategy that we're banking on. Since 2019, we do conduct an annual global equal pay analysis, and that compares the pay of employees in the same or very similar jobs. It's quite simple. We collect data globally, we analyze the data, quantify the gap, we set objectives for the markets, we communicate our commitment, and then we take action. This assessment helps to ensure we are following our global pay principles in our operated markets and identify those gaps on gender and race and ethnicity for review. As you can see here, the principles are also not rocket science. It is quite simple. We aim to be competitive, non-discriminatory, performance-based, understandable, and compliant, and we define what does that mean at McDonald's. We then provide remediation guidelines and also what we consider legitimate, non-discriminatory reasons for not making pay adjustments to our markets, together with their individual results. And then we explain in the Global Pay Equity Playbook, which is quite a fundamental document, how to go about it and what that means at a market level. So it's all not really rocket science. It is pretty simple. So what have been our 2021 outcomes? We have looked at 20 operated markets, 3 corporate offices. So overall, we looked at 182,000 employees, of which 174,000 were located in our restaurants and 107,000 were female. That is 94% of our global company employed population. For legal reasons, we are not allowed to collect data from our franchisees or from our development licensees and analyze the data for them. That is something that is legally forbidden. So what were the outcomes? For every $1 a white man earns at McDonald's, a woman globally earns 99.85 cents. And a member of a historically underrepresented group in the US earns $1.0063. Quite impressive results, I find. So you might say, well, you have your commitment, you have shown the progress, you've done it over several years, you started, globally, public commitment, report on the progress, so you're done. No, you're not. You're really not, very much far from being done. So while we are very happy with our 21 analysis results, where, as I already highlighted, we pay women globally on average 99.85% of what men are paid for comparable work, and we are even on track to close that identified gap in 22. And we have substantially attained equal pay for underrepresented groups in the US. We are far from done. For the very simple reason that the journey is a journey and the journey goes on. Equal pay is not a one-time commitment. It is very much a journey, and we are on track now to moving from our public commitment to reporting on progress to expanding the analysis. One of the reasons is that there is new legislation, and I'll talk about that in a minute, which we want to expand the analysis, and we're working towards a truly inclusive environment for all. The current regulatory landscape is already pretty challenging with the US Equal Pay Act, which has been in place for quite some time, but there's also new upcoming state and local laws that come into effect. Canada has just implemented the Pay Equity Act last year. Australia, that has been in place for quite some time, but now we do have that new EU directive, which is in the making, which requires pay transparency within organizations, not only for employees, but also for job seekers. It's a pretty broad concept. It's a pretty broad concept. It applies to employers with at least 50 employees, so it will also have an impact on our franchisees. And the burden of proof, what you're doing, is on the employer. So there's a shift, a pretty significant legal shift in that. Usually member states have 2 years to implement this international law. Unfortunately, the degree of harmonization is unclear. So this is still in the legislative process in EU level, we assume, based on what we've heard, that we can expect that companies are expected to be compliant by 25 or 26, around that time frame, which is still a long way away. But at the same time, we all need to get ready for what's coming up in the directive, which is a big change, basically. So how are we going to address this? Basically, we follow our strategy, our process, and our principles. This is why they are so important, and they are so fundamental for our work. We believe in equal pay for equal work. That doesn't change. We continue to execute against our strategy. We expand the analysis and run the process annually. This helps to ensure that we are following our pay principles globally in our operated markets, and that we continue to identify gaps there for gender as well as race and ethnicity. We continue to develop remediation plans for every single market with guidelines as outlined in our playbook, which we also have on the plans to expand to better support our franchise community and give them that little bit of education that is clearly going to be needed to be prepared for the future. And then, yes, and then we basically continue to close potential new gaps that we identify in the analysis for women globally and for historically underrepresented groups in the US at our different employee levels. So it's quite simple, just execute on the process. But also, it's not really rocket science. How do you prevent gaps to emerge or re-emerge? It's important to consistently get the basics right. And exactly this is what we are working with our markets on. Having one transparent pay system for all employees and groups of employees. Having a job evaluation process that's based on job descriptions and using objective criteria. Being aware of market forces, so what's going on in particular areas of the world, or even in specific roles. It's so important to consistently externally benchmark salaries when hiring, but also when promoting and when moving somebody laterally, to avoid basing pay on previous pay. That is something that you should really, really avoid. Ensuring internal equity by comparing with like jobs. And in addition to performance, particularly in the merit increase, considering the position in the salary range. Making sure that bonus or incentive plans do not cause pay discrimination in their very, very basic design. And then also ensuring that performance is calibrated between gender groups and the related pay is awarded fairly. The local management discretion over pay elements should be limited, and there should be clear rules around it. And those decisions absolutely need to be documented in a consistent way. In order to properly execute on all of that, we ensure that all our markets follow the good pay practices as just outlined. We want to make sure that they are understood, consistently implemented, and executed against. So, as to support that, we provide education and training. We have a global rewards framework that that helps our markets to identify the areas where they are probably. We provide our global rewards framework with the recommended actions for them to execute against, and clearly support through internal consulting and expert support. We're very proud that we achieved this internal recognition, that we won the 22 Circle of Excellence Award for the progress we have made together as a company and as a team, which is only awarded to the top 1% of teams at McDonald's. So very proud of that achievement. So what would I like you to take away from today? Achieving and maintaining equal pay is not a one-time project. It's a journey, and it requires ongoing focus and effort. It's not rocket science either, but you really have to follow the process. Especially in a decentralized organization, a clear goal and strategy is really important to build this understanding of what you're trying to achieve and the process and long-term guidance to illustrate what good looks like. These are really key to success. What gets measured gets done. Monitor the data, consult, and really important, build trust with the people, with the local markets, and hold leaders accountable so that they are truly telling you what's going on and not what you want to hear, but truly where the issues are. And then finally, thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy for you to reach out to me after this session and connect. Thank you very much.